The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 2, Reading and Viewing. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to explore and explain key features of texts and how they contribute to meaning. Learners should be able to describe plot, subplot, character portrayal, conflict, and dramatic purpose.
Hi there everyone. In this section, we will be looking carefully at the plot of Acts 3 and 4 of the play. We have looked at plot as being a series of events with their causes and effects. In this section, we will look at how Shakespeare develops the plot, and we will look for the clues that are given as to how the events will unfold. Where does Act 4 open?
Thursday, sir. The time is very short.
My father, Capulet, will have it so, and I'm nothing too slow to slake his haste.
You say you do not know the lady's mind. Uneven is the course, I like it not.
Immoderately. She weeps for Tybalt's death, and therefore have I little talked of love. For Venus smiles not in a house of tears. Now, sir, her father counts it dangerous that she do give her sorrow so much sway, and in his wisdom haste our marriage, to stop the inundation of her tears, which too, minded by herself alone, may be put from her by society. And now do you know the reasons for this haste?
I would I knew not why it should be slowed. Oh, look, sir, here comes the lady toward my cell.
What a difficult situation the Friar and Juliet find themselves in. Let us examine the events of the story that have led to this crisis. Who is Paris, and when did we first meet him? Paris is a nobleman who wants to marry Juliet. Can you still remember what Juliet's father said to Paris's marriage proposal at the beginning of the play? He says it is too soon. Juliet is too young, and anyway, Juliet should make the decision. But things have changed. Capulet has decided that Juliet must marry Paris almost immediately. This day is Tuesday, and Juliet will be married on Thursday. This touches on a very important aspect of the plot in this play. Everything happens so fast. Can you imagine what a diary of Romeo and Juliet's week together would look like? Sunday, Romeo and Juliet meet. Monday, they are married. Romeo kills Tybalt and is banished. Romeo and Juliet spend their wedding night together. Tuesday, Romeo leaves. Capulet decides Juliet must marry Paris. The wedding is brought forward to Wednesday. Juliet takes the potion. Wednesday, Juliet is placed in the tomb. Thursday, Romeo arrives. Romeo kills Paris and commits suicide. Juliet commits suicide. The idea of haste, of doing things quickly, is important in this play. As the friar agrees to marry Romeo and Juliet, he warns Romeo, wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. In the scene we have just watched, Paris is happy to rush into this marriage. He says, "And I am nothing slow to slack his haste." So, Capulet is in a hurry, and so is Paris. It is the friar who wants to slow things down. What does he mean when he says, "I would I knew not why it should be slowed"? Would means wish. He wishes he did not know a reason why the marriage between Paris and Juliet should be slowed. What is the reason that he knows about that prevents Juliet from marrying Paris? Of course, she is already married to Romeo. She cannot possibly marry another man. He wishes he didn't know this because now he is in a very difficult position. Does he tell Capulet? He can't marry Juliet to Paris. What else has happened the previous day? Paris tells the friar about Juliet's behavior.
Immoderately, she weeps for Tybalt's death, and therefore have I little talked of love. For Venus smiles not in a house of tears. Now, sir, her father counts it dangerous that she do give her sorrow so much sway, and in his wisdom haste our marriage, to stop the inundation of her tears.
How complicated this all is. Juliet is crying and crying. Everyone thinks she is crying because of Tybalt's death, but of course, it is also because of Romeo's banishment. Because she is so upset, Paris hasn't spoken to her, and because of her grief, Capulet wants to speed up the marriage. He thinks she is too upset, and her marriage will help cheer her up. The friar looks up and sees Juliet coming. Let us summarize the plot complications that the friar and Juliet have to deal with. Romeo has killed Tybalt. Romeo has been banished. Capulet has arranged for Juliet to marry Paris within days. Romeo cannot save Juliet. Juliet comes to the friar for advice. The friar must come up with an escape plan. Now you can see the plot unfolding in front of you. There is the situation. Imagine that you were the friar. What would you do as Juliet stands helpless in front of you? Let us watch a section of the scene acted out for us.
Hold, daughter, for I do spy a kind of hope. Go home, be merry, and give consent to marry Paris. Now tomorrow night, look that thou lie alone. Take thou this vial. Being then in bed, and this distilling liquor drink thou off. And presently, through all thy veins shall course a cold and drowsy humour, for no pulse shall keep his native progress, but surcease. No warmth, no breath shall testify thou livest. And in this borrowed likeness of shrunk death thou shalt continue 42 hours. And then, awake as from a pleasant sleep. Now, when the bridegroom in the morning comes to rouse thee from thy bed, there art thou dead. Thou shalt be born to that same ancient vault where all the kindred of the Capulets lie. In the meantime, shall Romeo by my letters know our drifter hither shall be come, and he and I will watch thy waking, and that same night shall Romeo bear thee hence to Mantua.
This is Friar Lawrence's plan. What problems can you see that might arise?
Maybe it's because Juliet is afraid to drink it because she might not know what's going to happen afterwards.
So what are you saying is, if that happens, will Friar have to marry Juliet to Paris?
Well, the plan depends on the letters getting through to Romeo. But what if something happens to those letters?
What happens if Fry isn't there when Juliet wakes up? And she's going to be terrified because she's at the tomb surrounded by dead people.
What if Juliet wakes up amongst all those dead corpses with no one to her rescue? Imagine the fear, knowing she used to become one herself.
That I can understand. What if the drink doesn't work and then she wakes up feeling normal? She'll be forced to get married to a man that she doesn't love.
But think about this, guys. What if the drink works too well and kills her?
All these thoughts will be crowding into the minds of the members of the audience. We know that a lot could go wrong, and we know that it will, because we have been told so in the prologue. The rest of Act 4 seems to go smoothly. The friar's plan appears to be working. On her wedding morning, the nurse comes to rouse her and finds her apparently dead. Friar Lawrence arranges for her funeral. But as Act 5 begins, we are waiting in suspense to see how the friar's plan unravels, and it starts to come apart immediately. Balthazar, Romeo's servant, brings him news in Mantua.
Her body sleeps in Capel's monument, and her immortal part with angels lives. I saw her laid low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post to tell it you.
Did you notice the idea of speed again? Balthazar takes post. He hurries or rides quickly to tell Romeo the terrible news. And how does Romeo respond?
As it ends so, then I defy you, stars. Thou knowest my lodging. Give me ink and paper and hire post horses. I will hence tonight.
He plans to return to Verona immediately and die in the tomb next to Juliet's body. Balthazar says he should have patience and be calmer, but Romeo won't listen. He does ask Balthazar again if there are any letters from the friar, but Balthazar says no, and Romeo says it doesn't matter. What a terrible mistake. It is vitally important that Romeo hears from the friar. What has happened to the letters? We find out in the very next scene, where Friar John, who was to take the friar's letter, returns to Verona. Friar Lawrence is afraid of the consequences of what has happened. Friar John was kept in a house and not allowed to leave because the inspectors of the city suspected he could be infectious with the plague, a terrible disease which killed many people. Now, Friar Lawrence knows that Juliet will wake up in the next 3 hours, and so he must hurry to the tomb alone to be with her. He is still making plans to sort everything out. He says, "But I will write again to Mantua and keep her at my cell till Romeo come." The events are now in place that will lead to disaster. Romeo has set off alone without first contacting the friar, and he has poison with him to kill himself. We know that the friar will not arrive in time to save Romeo. Do you now understand how a scene of a Shakespearean play develops out of what has come before and prepares us for what is coming afterwards? Remember to always look for clues as to what will happen later in the play. Now, here's your task. In this lesson, we have discussed how a series of unfortunate incidents contributed to the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. Make a list of events in Romeo and Juliet that contributed to the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, both killing themselves. For each event you have listed, suggest an alternative action that might have prevented the tragedy. In the next lesson, we shall look at the relationship between plot and character. From me, goodbye.